Hey everyone, it's Richard from Digital Foundry here, and I'm joined by John Linneman.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. So you've just come back from Gamescom, and a couple of days back you had a demonstration of Rise of the Tomb Raider on PlayStation 4. Now it's quite interesting that this one hasn't really been picked up by too many other outlets, which I find really surprising for two reasons. First of all, obviously it's a Xbox exclusive, so I think people are going to be kind of interested in the PS4 version. And secondly, it's just a great game.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed it and ultimately played through it 3 times, once on each platform, so I know it like the back of my hand, so I was very excited to see how it would shape up on PlayStation 4. And so far, it's looking absolutely excellent.
So what we're seeing here is one of the new innovations for the PS4 version, which is this survival co-op. So can you talk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So this is actually the Endurance mode, I believe, which was added in a DLC pack for the Xbox and Xbox One and PC versions. And for this new iteration of the game, and for the other versions as well, they have added a co-op mode, which basically takes the same idea and applies sort of a 2-player sort of design to it. And what's interesting here is that you always play as Lara, but they picked a different character model here for the other player.
Okay, so both players, from their own point of view, will be playing as Lara, but but there's just some kind of generic second person who is the avatar. I think the second character
was actually from one of the other DLC, the Baba Yaga DLC.
Okay.
So, but they picked someone with a similar rigging set up and a similar size to Lara, so that it kind of slotted right in.
So, first impressions on this, obviously we were really interested in the performance level, because if we flash back to the original definitive edition of Tomb Raider, Xbox One was kind of 30 FPS and indeed under, but PS4 was kind of, 45 to 60, and it was a gambit that kind of worked out pretty well for them, and we were kind of wondering whether it would be unlocked frame rate similarly on PS4 Rise of the Tomb Raider, but that is not the case right now, right?
Yeah, and that's what's interesting, because if we look back a couple months ago, there was some comments about, we're targeting 30 frames per second, but anything better than that is bonus, right? Which to me implied that, okay, they're going for an unlocked frame rate again. But after seeing the game live and playing it, it's obviously not. It's capped at 30 frames per second, and it ran completely consistently without any frame pacing errors or anything like that. It really looked quite nice, but they still stuck to the original story when I asked them that, oh yeah, if we can get above 30 frames per second, that's great. So I'm not really sure what's going on there.
Neo. I think maybe, I don't know, possibly they might do something on Neo. I mean, the PlayStation 4 version should be out after October, right? October the 1st?
Yeah, I think it's mid-October that it's hitting, so the Neo should be a known thing. It will be a known thing by then.
And obviously, I believe that all Q4 games should have some kind of Neo support, so possibly that is what they're talking about, possibly not.
That actually might be true. That's a good point.
Yeah, but I guess the other thing, of course, is that the Rise of the Tomb Raider engine is a huge increase technologically over the original definitive edition, so I don't know, maybe the best bet is just to pile up the visual features there and just, continue at the cap 30.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same thing as well. It was not close enough to 60 frames per second in the definitive edition that I would believe that they'd be able to hit that on the PS4, especially when at least playing on something like a GTX 970, even hitting a consistent 60 frames per second in 1080p is difficult.
Yeah, exactly. And also the other thing about the PC version, it is really CPU intensive in some scenes.
Exactly.
So again, that would kind of suggest that 30 FPS is the natural limit for the consoles, but, well, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. There's a lot of Neo speculation at the moment, and obviously developers aren't talking about it at the moment, so there we go.
Exactly. I do think an important thing to note, though, is, again, the input latency difference, because the original Xbox One release had significant input lag that I noticed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was on the aiming, wasn't it, specifically?
Yeah, it was very, very noticeable when trying to aim a precise weapon. And then I found on Xbox 360 and the PC, both versions which were somewhat handled by Nix's software, who who are working on this as well with Crystal Dynamics, they didn't have this issue.
Right.
And thankfully on PlayStation 4 it's the same thing. It does feel more responsive to play.
Well, that's really important, probably more than whatever enhanced shadows or whatever.
Exactly.
I mean, at the moment, we don't really have any idea of what the visual enhancements may be on PlayStation 4.
Right.
I think you were saying that the overall experience is very, very similar to the Xbox One at this point, just with a much more consistent level of performance.
Yeah, and Xbox One did pretty well with that, but there, when you get in some of these busier areas with a lot of foliage, sometimes, some screen tearing would crop up, and a little bit of slowdown here and there. Nothing too bad, but the PS4 version that I played was 100% locked at 30 frames per second. Not a single dropped or torn frame at all.
Excellent, good stuff. Okay, so yeah, that's the endurance mode, I guess it is, and you didn't actually get to see too much of the actual single-player campaign, is that right?
No, they weren't really showing that off there, unfortunately, at the show, but, the map used here in Endurance is very similar to what we see in the actual campaign, so I think it gives a pretty good preview of what we might expect.
Okay, so what we're now seeing is Croft Manor, which is a new addition for the game, and can you walk us through that one?
So what they showed initially was actually just typical third-person gameplay, but they sort of present her manor is almost like a tomb. So in regular Rise of the Tomb Raider, you discover these tombs where you solve puzzles and whatever, and they were quite good. But in this case, the entire manor itself is basically a giant puzzle. And so you're exploring it, you're finding clues, solving puzzles, pushing ladders, that sort of stuff. But at the same time, they're revealing more story elements and backstory elements as well about Lara and her rise as the Tomb Raider. And there's even some fun throwbacks to the old game, like if you remember like original PlayStation games, there was always the butler and the fridge running thing, right? Like that's here.
Okay, fair enough. And the curious thing about this is that while we're seeing standard 1080p 30 third-person gameplay, this aspect of the game is actually playable in PlayStation VR, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's what I actually got to play from the manor.
Okay.
It was quite convincing, actually. So they switch it to a first-person camera and give you two control options. You can move around freely with right stick to look and left stick to move, or they actually default to sort of the teleportation scheme that we often see on Vive. And for me, what was most fascinating about this was actually the fact that you could get up and walk around the room, and the PSVR headset was able to track you. Because every demo I've tried so far has been sort of a seated experience, right?
Yeah,
So here they've actually added sort of a Vive-like chaperone system to the mix. As you approach the limits, you get that sort of blue grid effect that says, okay, you can't go any further or we lose tracking.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'm not sure I'd be particularly keen on full traversal with the joypad. That warp mechanic, I think, is probably the way forward.
I agree, and the developers also suggested that it sounds like they're including the full motion for those that can handle it, but they're kind of suggesting that, yeah, you should probably stay with the teleportation.
So how did the image quality sort of stack up on that? Was it looking pretty much as per the usual game?
Visually, it actually looks just like what we're seeing here, but obviously in first person. The same high quality materials and in general look and the lighting and everything, it's all there. And the PSVR headset, I've always said, kind of has a look similar to the Oculus Rift DK2, but with a reduction in the screen door effect, so the actual pixels are less visible. So it's a little chunky looking, but you still get the same fidelity that we're seeing in the normal mode here. And of course it runs at 60 frames per second with the time warp feature.
Okay, good stuff. Well, I'm going to look forward to playing that. So this is an interesting one. It's a zombie mode that's been added as well. Now, you didn't actually get to play this at Gamescom, right?
No, they actually just switched over to sort of a video to showcase that this is actually in the game.
Well, I guess there's not really much we can really say about it, except it's a zombie mode. It seems to be set in Croft Manor. Well, funnily enough, there does seem to be a bit more to it than just killing zombies, although that's what we're sort of seeing here. There's seems to be sort of like finding keys and other elements to it, so maybe it's a bit more than your standard shoot 'em up.
Yeah, and I get the feeling that the zombies are not like acutely aware of the player's position at all times, so you can actually get the drop on them, adding a little bit of stealth to the mix, and you're kind of exploring and taking out zombies rather than just having zombies constantly streaming at you. So
yeah, because the sort of NPC mechanics are actually quite good in the main game, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are.
In terms of the AI, so if they can actually transplant that into a sort of zombie setting, then maybe there'll be a bit more to it. But the footage they're giving us here, it's just brutal.
It's ridiculous.
Well, I don't know. It should be pretty interesting to play regardless, and I guess it's all gravy on top of what is already a pretty fantastic game.
And I guess a key thing here is that all of this content is coming to the Xbox One and PC versions as well, except the PlayStation VR mode, which is exclusive to that version.
Oh, wow. So it's like a free upgrade then?
Yeah. If you own all the DLC, I think that's the trick.
Okay.
Or like if you have the season pass or whatever, you get all this content.
Nobody's left behind then.
Yep. Well, except for Xbox 360 owners.
Well, okay, fair enough. Okay, well, I'm going to leave it there, but I'd say this is looking really impressive. So, yeah, we're going to keep you updated with anything new about the game. And, to make sure you stay informed, please do subscribe. And, well, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye-bye.